Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. Today we're bringing you a real life legal drama. One dishonest agent, one innocent buyer and one huge lie. And the law comes in hot with section 17 of the Contract Act 1950. Let's watch how fraud unfolds and break it down after.
Bella, what are you doing here? Are you okay?
No, I'm not okay. I cannot find any property for my bakery shop. I'm so frustrated.
Just in time. I do have a lot of property to rent to you.
Oh my god, really? Wait, do they have a long-term lease agreement?
Absolutely. Just renew for 2 more years. Here's the tenancy agreement.
Wow, interesting. Okay, I'll buy it now. Where's the pen?
Here's the pen.
Yeah.
Sign here and here.
3 days later.
Wait, where's the bakery shop? Arisha deceived me? Oh no! What should I do now? I have to pay rent for it. What should I do now? Oh, wait! I have a lawyer friend. Tut. Hello?
A few moments later.
Alright, so what exactly happened? Why are you here?
I'm deceived by my own friends to buy a property. So what should I do?
Well, based on what you've told me, I think this is a case of fraud.
What? Fraud? I have been scammed by my own friend.
It's okay, calm down.
Alright.
Bella, I see that you're really stressed about this, but don't worry. In this situation, I'd say that Arisha lied to you and forged the contract, yes?
Yes.
So, there's 2 ways to compensate. First, you can cancel your contract, or second, you can ask for compensation.
Oh, so I have rights.
Yes.
Okay. How dare you, Shah? I will sue her later.
The next day.
What's this? I have been sued. What did I do wrong?
Oops, let's pause. What exactly is fraud under the law? Fraud is not about just lying. It's about intentionally tricking someone into a deal, and trust me, people do it more often than we think. So, what is fraud? The law says fraud includes any act done to deceive or to induce someone to enter into a contract. This deception could come from the seller themselves, their agent, or even with their knowledge. And when consent is affected by fraud, it's no longer free. That makes the contract voidable under Section 19 of the Contract Act 1950. Frauds can come in many forms, but the law outlines 5 main categories. Let me introduce them, like characters in crime stories. For the first one, the smooth talker. Our first character is the one who tells you what you want to hear, even if it's a lie. In the case of Heng Chui Lian and Wong Tak Tong, the defendant made a false statement about a land sale. He knew it wasn't true, yet he said it anyway. He didn't just make a mistake, he made a move. The court said that's fraud because he had no belief in what he was saying. So it means that he just made a statement. He tells people that he have a shop, he have a land to sell, but he knowingly know that there isn't any land to be sold. Second, then we have the hider. They don't lie directly, but they hide the truth. That's called active concealment. Imagine this: a seller paints over cracks in the wall, hoping you won't notice. That's exactly what happens in Horsfall and Thomas. The seller hid a defect in a gun, but the buyer never checked the gun before buying it, so the fraud didn't affect his decision. The court said that the contract still stands. Listen, fraud needs to actually influence the decision to void a contract. So for the third one, is the charmer, the one who makes promises they have no intention to keep. In Mui Plaza's neighborhood and Hong Leong neighborhood, one party entered a loan arrangement and made promises they never planned to fulfill. It wasn't just broken trust, it was fraud. If you promise, you will never deliver. Section 17 says you're guilty. Next one, sometimes fraud isn't about words, it's about dirty tactics. That's where the catch-all clause comes in, an act fitted to deceive. In Loy Hyang Cheong and Context Shin, the court said fraud exists when someone deliberately causes another person to lose a non-legal rights. Same in Datuk Jagin Singh case, where a transfer was made just to cheat someone. You see, fraud isn't always obvious, but the courts did catch the trickster. And finally, the silence name didn't say anything wrong, but they also don't say what they should say. Normally, silence isn't fraud, but this was clarified in Lau Hee Tia and Hargill Engineering. The buyer had to investigate buyer beware, right? Like the one I said before. But not always. In Lim Kim Hua and Ho Chui Lan, there was a relationship of trust, so keeping silent became dishonest. And in Tengku Abdullah and Muhammad Latif, the court explained that when one person negotiates on behalf of another, then in fiduciary relationship, they must speak up. Silence then is fraud by omission. Okay, so what happens if fraud is proven? Well, under Section 19, the contract becomes voidable. That means victim can cancel the contract by rescission, refuse to perform it, and lastly claim for damages, or expressing even continue with it if they want to. Remember, fraud isn't always a golden ticket to cancel. The court will ask two big questions. Did the fraud actually affect your decision? And could you have discovered the truth yourself? In Edward and Small, the buyer hired an expert agent to check the mind and didn't rely on the seller. So therefore, there is no fraud there because the buyer didn't trust the information given by the fraudster. Second, in Weitah Construction, the buyer instructed their lawyer to check the title showing diligence. But in Tan Chai Chiu and Eastern Mining, the buyer had all the tools to check the truth but didn't. The court said to back, you can't avoid the contract now, meaning that if you have the ability to check something or you have the power to do some inspection and whatnot, you should have done that before entering into a contract.
For the next part, I will be discussing the remedies available in Tort for Fraud, focusing on how Malaysian law protects victims when fraud has induced them into a contract. The primary remedy for fraud is rescission. This means the contract is treated as void from the beginning and the parties are returned to their original positions. For example, in Lakshmi Arumugan and NMLA, an elderly illiterate woman was deceived into signing a sale agreement by the defendant who misrepresented as a loan document. The court found this to be clear fraud and granted rescission. Under Section 27B of the Specific Relief Act 1950, specific performance cannot be enforced against a party whose consent was obtained through fraudulent means. Therefore, the court denied the defendant's request for specific performance, preventing him from benefiting from his deceit. Beyond rescission, a victim of fraud is also entitled to damages, a key distinction from mere misrepresentation, where damages may not be available. In cases of fraud, damages can be awarded to cover all losses directly resulting from the fraudulent act. This includes not only financial losses, but also consequential losses that flowed naturally from the fraud. In Lakshmi Arumugan, the plaintiff was entitled to both rescission and damages, reflecting the court's view that fraud deserved stronger remedial response than innocent misrepresentation. It's important to distinguish damages from indemnity. While indemnity simply reimburses the victim for expenses like legal fees or stamp duty to restore them to their pre-contract position, damages aim to compensate for harm or loss caused by the fraud. A helpful case to illustrate this is Whittington and Silhaim, where the court granted indemnity for necessary expenses such as rent and repairs, but also recognized that in cases of fraudulent misrepresentation, wider damages may be recoverable, such as losses of profit, stock, or health-related costs, depending on the circumstances. Finally, a victim of fraud may also affirm the contract and claim compensation under Section 19(2) of the Contracts Act 1950. If they choose to go ahead with the contract despite the fraud, they are still entitled to recover the difference between what was promised and what was actually delivered. This ensures the party is not unfairly disadvantaged for choosing to proceed. In summary, tort remedies for fraud go beyond merely cancelling the contract. They include rescission, indemnity, and full compensatory damages, all aimed at ensuring that the wrongdoer does not profit from the deceit and that justice is served for the victim.
So in conclusion, fraud under Section 17 is about more than just lies. It's about intentional deception to get someone into a contract. It can be a false fact, a hidden truth, a fake promise, or even silence when silence is deadly. But remember, if you can prove fraud, you can fight back. The law doesn't just punish the fraudster, it protects the victim. Thank you for listening, and remember, always check, always ask, and never trust a sweet dealer without a solid check.